Hello, and welcome. Have you ever wondered about the concept of original sin? The idea that all of humanity is born with a stain of guilt from the first sin of Adam and Eve? It's a cornerstone of some Christian traditions. But what if I told you that it's far from a universal belief? In fact, from within Christianity itself, across world religions, and into the realms of modern philosophy, there are powerful and compelling alternative views that completely reshape our understanding of human nature, evil, and our own moral responsibility. Today we're diving deep into these fascinating perspectives. Let's start within Christianity. While the Augustinian view of inherited guilt is prominent in the West, it's not the only game in town. The Eastern Orthodox Church, for instance, offers a profoundly different interpretation. They speak of ancestral sin, not original sin. What's the difference? It's huge. In this view, we don't inherit the guilt of Adam's sin. That was his personal transgression. Instead, we inherit the consequences. Think of it like a spiritual disease passed down through generations. The consequences are mortality, a tendency towards corruption, and a weakened will that makes it easier for us to choose sin. So, you're not born guilty, you're born into a world where sin is easier and death is inevitable. The goal of salvation, then, isn't about wiping away inherited guilt, but about healing. It's a process called theosis, or deification, where human nature is restored to its full potential for communion with God, ultimately conquering death and corruption. It's a therapeutic model, not a legal one. Now, let's rewind to early Christianity and look at a view that was so radical, it was condemned as heresy. Pelagianism. Pelagius offered a direct challenge to the idea of inherited sin. His take? Humans are born morally neutral, completely innocent, with the full capacity to choose between good and evil. For him, sin isn't a condition we're born with. It's a choice we make. Adam didn't pass down a spiritual defect. He just set a really bad example. According to Pelagianism, the responsibility is entirely on us. It champions radical free will, suggesting we have the power to live a sinless life through our own choices. While the early church rejected this view, its emphasis on personal agency and moral responsibility has echoed through the centuries and continues to influence modern thought. This brings us to more contemporary Christian movements like Unitarianism and various forms of liberal Christianity. Many of these traditions outright reject the doctrine of inherited sin and guilt. They align with the idea that individuals are responsible only for their own actions and choices. They believe that holding someone accountable for a sin committed thousands of years ago is inconsistent with the concept of a just and loving God. Others reject the term original sin entirely, but reinterpret it as a powerful metaphor. In this light, original sin isn't a literal inherited stain, but a description of the universal human condition, our shared tendency toward selfishness, our imperfections, or the systemic injustices embedded within our societies. It's a way of acknowledging that something is fundamentally off with the world and human experience, without resorting to a literal biological transmission of guilt. But what if we step outside of Christianity altogether? The Abrahamic faiths of Judaism and Islam, which share the Genesis story, have fundamentally different takes. In Judaism, the story of Adam and Eve is crucial for understanding the human condition. It explains mortality, hardship, and why we struggle. But the idea of inherited guilt? It's simply not there. Jewish thought emphasizes that each individual is accountable only for their own actions. Life is seen as a constant struggle between the yetzer hatov, the good inclination, and the yetzer hara, the evil inclination. You are responsible for which one you feed. There is no original stain that predetermines your failure. Islam offers an even clearer rejection. The Quran teaches that after Adam and Eve sinned, they repented, and God forgave them completely. Their sin was a personal mistake, and its consequences do not extend to their descendants. According to Islamic teaching, every single person is born in a state of fitrah, which means a natural state of purity, innocence, and an innate disposition toward goodness and belief in one God. Sin is something one acquires through their own choices and actions during their life. The slate is wiped clean for every newborn. This places the onus of morality squarely on the individual, free from any ancestral baggage. Venturing further east, we encounter religions like Hinduism, where the entire framework for understanding the human problem is different. The core issue isn't a theological sin against a divine law, but rather avidya or ignorance. It's the ignorance of our true self, the Atman, which is divine and one with the ultimate reality, Brahman. This ignorance leads to desire, attachment, and suffering, which in turn generates karma, the law of cause and effect that binds us to the cycle of rebirth, or samsara. The goal isn't forgiveness for a primordial sin, but enlightenment and liberation, moksha, from this cycle by realizing our true divine nature. The problem isn't inherited guilt, but inherited ignorance. Now let's turn to the modern world, where scientific and philosophical critiques have offered entirely new ways to think about human flaws. The rise of evolutionary biology and genetics poses a significant challenge to a literal interpretation of original sin. Science tells a story of human origins that doesn't involve a single ancestral couple, Adam and Eve, from whom all humanity descended. If there was no literal first pair, the mechanism for a single sinful act being passed down to all their descendants becomes biologically and historically untenable for many. From a naturalistic viewpoint, human flaws like aggression, selfishness, or tribalism aren't the result of a spiritual fall from grace. Instead, they are seen as evolutionary holdovers, instincts that may have been beneficial for survival in our ancestral past, but are often maladaptive in modern society. Or they are the result of social conditioning, trauma, and upbringing. The problem isn't spiritual, it's biological and sociological. In response to a perceived negativity in the doctrine of original sin, some contemporary theologians and thinkers have proposed a radical alternative, original blessing. Championed by thinkers like Matthew Fox, this perspective argues that instead of starting with a fall, we should start with the inherent goodness and beauty of creation. It emphasizes that we are made in the divine image and that our primary state is one of blessing, not sin. The focus shifts from dwelling on inherited guilt to celebrating the gift of life and our potential for goodness, creativity, and compassion. It is a call to see the divine spark within ourselves and the world around us first and foremost. Finally, we have the perspective of secular humanism, which sets aside theological frameworks entirely. Humanism places moral authority and responsibility squarely within humanity itself. From this viewpoint, moral failings aren't evidence of a universal spiritual defect or a fallen nature. They are correctable problems that can be addressed through reason, education, empathy, and the improvement of social structures. Humans are seen as inherently capable of creating their own ethical systems and solving their own problems. There is no need for a concept of sin, original or otherwise, because human beings are viewed as autonomous moral agents, fully responsible for their choices and capable of progress without divine intervention. So, from ancestral sin to radical free will, from a metaphor for systemic flaws to a state of natural purity, the alternatives to original sin are as diverse as they are thought-provoking. They challenge us to reconsider our starting point. Are we born broken, or are we born good? Are we inheritors of guilt, or inheritors of potential? These aren't just abstract theological debates. They fundamentally shape how we see ourselves, our neighbors, and our responsibility to the world. They ask us to decide whether the human story is primarily one of tragedy and redemption, or one of potential and becoming. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. If you found this exploration fascinating, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content that challenges the way we think. See you next time.